The desert shimmered with heat, the horizon wavering like a mirage. On the outskirts of the classified Nevada facility, known on paper as Area 19 but affectionately nicknamed the Sandbox by its inhabitants, 24 soldiers stood at stiff attention. Their uniforms clung to their backs with sweat, the scent of gun oil and sun-baked metal heavy in the air. A low whine echoed overhead as a sleek, silver alien vessel descended, casting a cool shadow across the cracked dirt. From the vessel's underbelly extended a platform, and down it glided the delegation from the Zarnathi Empire. Clad in luminescent armor that shimmered like oil on water, they moved with the fluidity of machines but the smugness of royalty. Their leader, Lord High Marshal Vrexcellenti IV, tall, bone-thin, and wrapped in ceremonial robes over his bio-armored frame, sniffed the air as if Earth itself offended his senses. "Ah," he said, his voice vibrating through a voice synth apparatus that turned every syllable into an echoing sneer. "So this is the primitive mud ball we've been forced to inspect. Charming." Beside him, Ambassador Thresk, a fleshy creature shaped like a jellyfish in a tuxedo, blinked his dozen gelatinous eyes and made a note on his hovering datapad. Current atmospheric toxicity, manageable. Cultural backwardness, visually confirmed. From the human side, Major Elena McBride remained expressionless. The desert sun bounced off her aviator sunglasses as she regarded the arriving delegation with the practiced indifference of someone who'd been through 18 briefings and still had no idea what to expect. Next to her, chewing gum with the kind of casual defiance only a retired or rehired Marine could pull off, was Sergeant Hank Boone, bald, broad, and sunburned in a way that dared the UV index to try harder. "They always float in like they're about to colonize a salad bar," Boone muttered under his breath. McBride didn't crack a smile. "Sergeant, remember the briefing, respectful, silent, non-threatening." Boone spat his gum into a nearby cactus. "I'm all three. Mostly." Vrexcellenti I stepped forward, inspecting the base with the kind of disdain reserved for airport bathrooms and karaoke bars. His voice projected to all in earshot. "We appreciate your willingness to display your military assets. Though I must confess, the smell of oxidized iron and crude propellant is quaint." McBride gave a short nod. "You'll find we value simplicity, Marshal. Effectiveness over flair." Boone chuckled. "And bullets over bragging rights." Thresk made a sound like a wet plop and translated Boone's comment aloud. Vrexcellenti I's nostrils flared. The tour began, with McBride leading the aliens past rows of weapon displays. Holograms flickered to life, showing grainy footage of past battles, urban warfare, anti-insurgency operations, orbital drop deployments, and a particularly impressive tank assault during the Arctic Siege of 2082. The aliens watched with expressions that oscillated between confusion and condescension. They paused at a table where the M2 Browning sat, a squat, heavy beast of a weapon, blackened with age, but lovingly maintained. Boone patted it like a family dog. "This here's the pig," he said. "Been serving justice since 1933. Fires a .50 BMG round. That's big boy ammo. Punches through walls, vehicles, egos." Thresk translated again, injecting more scorn with every syllable. Vrexcellenti I leaned in, blinking at the weapon with curiosity, then disdain. "Your pig still uses combustion-based mechanics?" he asked. "A glorified controlled detonation? Barbaric. Do you not possess beam fusion accelerants or intelligent nanoplasma projectors?" Boone grinned. "Do those kill better than 50 calories? Didn't think so." A Zarnathi engineer, delicate fingers gliding over a scanning device, frowned as he read the weapon's readout. "There's no computational intelligence, no AI targeting, no plasma regulation, no gravitic propulsion." Boone tapped the side of the M2. "Yeah, it's called point and shoot. That means you don't need to ask permission from a toaster to kill the guy trying to kill you." The alien blinked. "This is not war. This is brute savagery." McBride interrupted, sharp as a scalpel. "And yet it works." Vrexcellenti I turned away, clearly unimpressed. "Your continued reliance on these crude implements suggests your species has not evolved past the fetishization of violence. In the Zarnathi Empire, war is an elegant calculation of energy, probability, and minimal mess. Boone lit a cigarette. Sounds boring. They moved on, inspecting rocket launchers, rail rifles, EMP grenades, and other human hardware. The aliens sneered at the lack of auto-replenishing ammo systems, mocked the reliance on manual firing mechanisms, and found deep offense in the absence of biometric authorization protocols. When shown a mechanized infantry exosuit, one of the alien tacticians gasped. No neural interface? No hormonal sync? You actually pilot this. McBride remained calm. Our soldiers trust their hands more than they trust machines. The group stopped at a shooting range, where human soldiers demonstrated small arms against armored dummies. The aliens flinched at the noise, covering ears not built for sonic chaos. One projectile embedded so deep into the target that a Zarnathi observer nervously backed away. You fling solid metal, he gasped. At hypersonic speeds? That's psychotic. Boone grinned. Only if you're on the receiving end. Back at the landing pad, Vrexel and T.I. finally turned to McBride with the air of someone finishing an unpleasant chore. We thank you for your efforts. The Galactic Assembly will be informed. As it stands, Earth's continued dependence on low-grade explosive weaponry renders your planet unfit for advanced military integration. You will be designated a Class 9 primitive zone, subject to technological curation and future uplift by authorized empires. McBride didn't blink. We're not applying for a job. Friese jiggled smugly. Then consider this an evaluation for your own safety. We fear that exposure to the galactic community would overwhelm your species' nervous system. Boone stepped forward, and we fear y'all are about to choke on your own smug. McBride held out a restraining arm. That's enough, Sergeant. Vrexel and T.I. smirked. When the Zarnathi return, it will be with authority, not curiosity. Boone blew smoke toward him. You bring your fancy ships. We'll bring the pig. Vrexel and T.I.'s eyes narrowed. You truly believe that Relic could harm us? Boone stared him down. I believe it'll ruin your week. As the aliens ascended into their ship, there was a tension in the air like dry lightning. Soldiers remained at alert. Boone quietly reloaded the M2, his knuckles white. Back inside the base's war room, McBride tossed her cap onto the table and looked at the holographic readouts of the departing vessel. They're coming back, she said. Boone cracked his neck. Let him. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to decode what he was made of. You're not worried? He shrugged. Lady, I've been shot at in 6 languages. Aliens with opinions don't even make the list anymore. Outside, the desert wind picked up, scattering sand over old artillery bunkers and faded target boards. The M2 sat in its shed, oiled and loaded, waiting like an old outlaw just itching for one last ride. And far above, the Zarnathi ship shimmered into the blackness of space, its pride blinding it to what Earth was really made of. Not primitive, just patient. 3 weeks after the Zarnathi delegation vanished into the sky, orbit over Earth lit up like a broken Christmas bulb. Civilian satellites caught glimpses first, flashes of movement, shadows blotting out stars, sudden temperature spikes over the Pacific. Then the military eyes caught the rest. Over 40 Zarnathi warships appeared within geosynchronous orbit, encasing Earth in a shimmering web of aggression. There were no warnings, no broadcasts, just silence wrapped in menace. Inside the Pentagon's sub-basement command center, the mood hovered between calculated panic and bitter déjà vu. Every screen glowed red. Every console beeped a new threat. General Carolyn Reese, gray hair tied tight, voice sharper than barbed wire, stood in front of the central display, arms crossed. They didn't just come to posture, she said flatly. They came to neuter. Across from her stood Major McBride, face calm but jaw tense. We expected a warning, a diplomatic push. Reese snorted. You don't bring 40 ships for a stern letter. They think we're too backward to fight back. They want a quick cleanup. Scalp a few bunkers, shut down resistance, and slap a compliance collar around our necks. Boone leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, boots still dusty from the field. They're about to find out we don't wear collars. Reese turned, eyes narrowing. We need a live test. A controlled encounter. something loud and painful that tells them we're not a footnote in their empire. McBride nodded. The sandbox. Staged ambush. No civilians. We set the bait, draw them in, and let M choke on gunpowder. Boone cracked his knuckles. About damn time. 2 days later, a message was sent on open comms. A surrender signal, complete with coordinates and a formal request for peaceful annexation discussions. The Zarnathi bit instantly. 10 dropships broke formation, gliding down toward the Mojave coordinates like carrion birds. Their scanners read no significant EM resistance, no high-energy weapon systems, no shield arrays, just a handful of thermal signatures and primitive signal noise. On board one of the Zarnathi command ships, Subcommander Zaltik watched the descent with clinical detachment. His 4 arms moved in perfect harmony as he adjusted fleet diagnostics. Primitive species display textbook behavior. Surrender when outmatched. I predict compliance in under 1 planetary cycle. Behind him, strategist Relay, tall, reptilian, exuding boredom, drummed her claws against a console. Their weapons are essentially fire sticks. Their resistance will be equivalent to swatting a sand fly with a meteor. On the surface, Boone leaned over the M2, now reassembled, refitted, and resting atop a makeshift fortress made of sandbags and cargo crates. Sunlight danced off its steel body, like it was grinning. Around him, 8 other soldiers sat crouched with old rifles, tripwire grenades, and a look in their eyes that said they'd already died once and didn't care about trying it again. One of them, Corporal Vasquez, tapped the barrel of her rifle. "You sure they're dumb enough to fall for this?" Boone didn't look up. These guys measure tech by how many blinking lights it's got. They'll land thinking we're playing checkers. Meanwhile, we're setting the board on fire. The dropships pierced the clouds and hovered low. The Zarnathi disembarked like they were entering a zoo, weapons holstered, helmets off, taking notes. The humans stood still, hands raised, posture relaxed. Boone even yawned. A Zarnathi commander approached, translator buzzing. "You have made the correct decision. Compliance will ensure minimal restructuring." Boone spat in the dust. "We didn't come to comply. We came to introduce you to something old school." The alien blinked. "Clarify." Boone's hand dropped to the M2's charging handle. The old gun roared to life, spitting .50 cal rounds with a staccato, so loud it cracked sky. The first 10 aliens disintegrated into meat and armor shards. The rest dove for cover, unprepared for the physics-defying velocity of ancient human savagery. Plasma shields sparked, failed, and shattered. Their armor, calibrated for directed energy weapons, crumpled under the brutal simplicity of kinetic force. The other humans joined in. Every bullet fired with intent. Every grenade thrown with precision. It was a symphony of controlled chaos. The air filled with screams, metal tearing, alien tech frying under good old-fashioned combustion. Above, in orbit, Zaltik's eyes widened. "We are losing telemetry from all ground units. Sensors report atmospheric particulate increases consistent with ballistic detonation." Vrele leaned in. "They're using chemical projectiles." Zaltik stared at the feed. "They've turned battlefield chaos into a doctrine. No predictive modeling works on this." Earth didn't follow their rules. Boone ducked behind cover as a plasma bolt scorched past. He popped back up, grinned like a man watching his high school bully slip on ice, and unleashed another burst. The M2 overheated. He swapped the barrel mid-fire, fingers moving with the grace of someone who had done it under worse pressure. Vasquez shouted, "They're trying to flank." "Let him." Boone hollered back. "We've got surprises they don't even have words for." 2 soldiers triggered remote mines. The resulting explosions sent a dozen Zarnathi troops tumbling like dolls. Drones overhead fed footage back to the Pentagon, where generals watched with expressions that shifted from disbelief to satisfaction. Reese whispered, "They actually fell for it." McBride, arms crossed, nodded slowly. "Because they can't comprehend a weapon that kills without asking permission." In the Mojave, smoke thickened. The remaining Zarnathi scrambled for extraction signals. Boone fired again, each burst chipping away at their confidence. The battlefield wasn't just a massacre. It was a message. Eventually, The last Zarnathi hit the dirt, bleeding strange colors and gasping in disbelief. Boone stood, slinging the smoking M2 over his shoulder. Let that be a lesson in humility. An Allied recon drone swooped low, transmitting the image of scorched alien gear, busted shields, and a half-buried Zarnathi banner, now riddled with bullet holes. Boone lit a cigarette with the tip of a still-warm casing. Vasquez looked around the rubble. You think they'll come back? Boone nodded slowly. Oh, they'll be pissed now. They thought we were a trivia question. Turns out we're the final exam. Orbitally, the Zarnathi fleet fell into temporary disarray. Internal debates erupted. Command logs conflicted. How could a pre-fusion species repel an elite strike team? How could a people still using combustion-based tools annihilate post-synthetic armor? Zaltik replayed footage of Boone firing the M2, his expression unreadable. This is not war, he whispered. This is controlled madness. Strategic anarchy. They have no quantum alignments. No tactical synchronizers. They simply fight. Vrele looked up from her console. Then perhaps it is not their tools that are primitive. It is our arrogance. On Earth, McBride stood in the war room, reviewing casualty reports. 0 human losses. 56 Zarnathi Kia. 10 captured. Her finger hovered over the transmit button. Let them listen, she said. She pushed it. The signal broadcast to the Zarnathi fleet was grainy, unrefined. Just Boone, sweaty, shirt half ripped, grinning into the camera. You called our weapons trash. Guess what? Trash just kick your ass. He leaned in closer. Next time you come, bring more than insults. The feed cut. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. On board every ship in orbit, and eventually back in Zarnathi space. That clip would be replayed millions of times. Not for its tactical value, not for intelligence, but for what it represented. The humans had responded not with high-tech countermeasures or advanced diplomatic pleas. They had answered humiliation with bullets. They had met arrogance with grit. And worse, far worse, they seemed to be enjoying it. McBride turned away from the console. They're recalibrating. Reese grunted. Let them. We've got plenty of pig left to go around. Outside, in the blood-warmed wind of the desert, the old machine gun stood ready once more. Oiled. Federal-focused. A symbol of defiance not just in metal, but in mindset. Earth had drawn first blood, and it hadn't even broken a sweat. They came back. Not with 10 dropships this time, but with a full planetary assault wave, backed by orbital artillery platforms and low-orbit kinetic suppressors. The Zarnathi Empire, humiliated by what they called the ballistic incident, had dispatched an extermination fleet led by Supreme Commander Quartel, a creature born in vacuum, raised in conquest, and worshipped by a military so rigid it snapped under irony. He was not here to negotiate. He was here to erase. The broadcasts from the Empire made that clear. Humans were labeled anomalous vermin, chemical-era insurgents, and most commonly, statistical impossibilities. The Zarnathi High Assembly had voted unanimously to sanction total occupation protocols. According to their logic matrices, the odds of further resistance were negligible. Their flaw, as always, was mistaking unpredictability for weakness. In a hangar beneath NORAD, Boone stared at the map display while chewing on the same stick of gum he'd had since breakfast. His gear was spread out around him, mag pouches, a flak vest, duct tape, and a wrench with the word Stacy engraved into the handle. It was the kind of preparation that looked lazy until it started winning wars. General Reese entered without ceremony. Her gaze cut through the flickering lights like it had somewhere to be. She didn't ask if Boone was ready. She didn't need to. They're landing in Texas, she said. Amarillo, to be specific. Agricultural corridor. Minimal risk to civilian centers. They're drawing a line in the sand. Boone spat the gum into a can and stood up. Then it's time we kick sand in their face. Vasquez was already checking the mounts on a rebuilt Browning that had been fused with parts from a salvaged railgun housing. They'd named it Gertrude. It didn't need to be pretty. It just needed to make a point. The transport flew low, skimming treetops and cornfields, engine grumbling like a chainsaw with an attitude. In the hold, Boone briefed the team using a Sharpie and a sandwich wrapper. They're not expecting another ambush. They think we'll run, or surrender, or shoot fireworks from our pickup trucks, which we might, but mostly, we're going to let them taste what real resolve looks like. Staff Sergeant Dion Richards, a towering man who used sarcasm like a scalpel, grinned. And what's that taste like? Boone looked up, like burned arrogance in gun oil. As they dropped into the outer ring of the Zarnathi incursion zone, the landscape shifted. Alien prefabs littered the ground, humming with sterile efficiency. Blue armored troops patrolled methodically, scanning the surroundings with their multi-spectrum visors. They weren't afraid. They were efficient. Too efficient. The team moved fast, carving through the edge patrols with ruthless precision. Every bullet found bone. Every movement was silent, intentional, ugly. The humans didn't fight like soldiers in the Zarnathi archives. They didn't follow patterns. They didn't secure zones or establish perimeters. They erupted, bled chaos, and vanished before the aliens could file a report. By the third skirmish, panic began setting in. Cortel's field captains couldn't predict the resistance. Their command AIs failed to model the tactical chaos. Infantry formations broke as ambushes layered on ambushes. Human troops would vanish underground, emerge behind enemy lines, and fight with a joy that bordered on terrifying. Inside the Zarnathi flagship, Cortel watched grainy helmet feeds of his officers getting gunned down by men in dirt-covered camo pants. One clip showed Richards barreling through a comms relay with nothing but a modified shotgun and a fire axe. Another showed Vasquez loading Gertrude mid-battle while quoting old Schwarzenegger movies. Cortel turned to his senior tactician. "Explain." The tactician replied, "They do not follow linear escalation. Their responses are inconsistent. We expected structured resistance. We receive theater." Cortel leaned in. "What is their objective?" "To survive, and to make sure we don't." Back on the ground, Boone crouched behind a blown-out alien cargo hauler, watching Zarnathi troops retreat under drone fire. He lit a cigarette with a smoldering power coil and radioed command. "Update. Enemy posture shifting from offensive to confused. They're retreating into formation like they think that'll help." McBride's voice crackled in. "Do not let them regroup. Hit their logistics. Break their comms. Make them feel hunted." Boone exhaled smoke into the wind. "Copy that. Let's go make wish they picked another backwater planet." They hit the enemy's forward base under nightfall, cutting power relays and rigging explosive traps using discarded alien batteries and old microwave transformers. When the plasma conduits blew, the sky turned green, and the resulting blast vaporized half the outpost in under 3 seconds. The rest of the night was fire and cursing and metal. Vasquez and Richards took high ground with Gertrude, sending waves of .50 cal fury into retreating alien squads. Boone went trench-side, using a scope lever-action rifle to tag officers mid-shout. Every pull of the trigger felt like a signature. By morning, the humans had withdrawn, leaving behind nothing but scorched earth, alien screams, and a single battered American flag tied to the barrel of a ruined Zarnathi hover tank. Cortel's report to the High Assembly was incoherent by Empire standards. He used terms like demoralization shock spiral, psychotactical dissonance, and cultural weaponization. The most damning line: these humans engage war like a competitive contact sport they've spent centuries training for. He called for reinforcements. The Assembly refused. They didn't believe his reports. They thought his humiliation had infected his objectivity. To them, Earth remained a minor planet with exaggerated resistance, so they denied him more ships. His mistake was assuming humans needed a numerical advantage. Boone's next plan was simple: isolate Cortel, cut his fleet's communications, and capture or kill the bastard. But the route was suicide. They'd have to hit the orbital uplink compound, the most fortified structure on the surface, guarded by a private elite Zarnathi cadre, the kind who didn't blink when vaporizing civilians, the kind who thought human emotional volatility was a design flaw. McBride authorized the op with a dry smile. "You want to charge an alien citadel with 6 people and a glorified machine gun?" Boone replied, "No, I want to embarrass an empire." She handed him a flask. "Then go make history." The assault began at dusk, during a dust storm that grounded most of the Empire's aerial scouts. The team moved like whispers. They bypassed sentry drones, with homemade signal jammers rigged from MP3 players and copper wire. They climbed vents with boots wrapped in cloth. They dismantled turrets using crowbars and attitude. By the time they breached the uplink command room, Cortel's voice was echoing across the chamber, trying to rally what few forces still believed he could win. Boone stepped into the room, rifle raised, dust covering his face like war paint. Cortel turned slowly, his armor gleaming, his stature immense. You. Boone raised an eyebrow. Me. You are not special. You are not advanced. You are not evolved. Boone grinned. And yet here we are. Cortel lunged, plasma blade ignited, moving faster than any human should have survived. But Boone didn't flinch. He dropped, rolled, came up firing. 2 shots cracked. The first hit armor. The second didn't need to. It hit pride. Cortel staggered, then fell, gasping in disbelief. Boone stepped over him, leveled the rifle. This is for calling my gun trash. He didn't fire. Instead, he turned, walked to the comms console, and patched a signal. This is Boone. The uplink's ours. If you're a Zarnathi still on Earth, you've got 2 choices. Leave fast or get familiar with the taste of dirt. The feed cut to black. Within the hour, Zarnathi troops across the globe dropped weapons, scrambled for shuttles, or begged for surrender. Not because of the tactical victory, but because they knew, deep down, they didn't understand these humans. And what they didn't understand, they couldn't conquer. Back at base, McBride and Reese watched the withdrawal unfold like a reversed invasion. Reese lit a cigar. You ever seen a galactic superpower run away from a pig of a machine gun and a team of Wiseses? McBride leaned back. I have now. Boone sat outside, bruised, soot-faced, Gertrude resting beside him. He didn't smile. He just stared at the stars and waited, because he knew they'd be back. And next time, they'd bring bigger toys. But so would he. The second wave didn't land. It cracked open the sky. Orbit burned white with the sudden arrival of the Empire's Second Armada, a fleet engineered not for occupation but obliteration. Their ships did not descend, they punished. Energy beams as wide as stadiums lanced from the upper atmosphere, turning valleys into craters, ridges into smoldering shadows. This time, the Zarnathi weren't trying to establish order. They were trying to unright Earth. General Reese had expected a reprisal. Not this. She stood inside a mountain facility whose walls trembled with every orbital impact, hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the hollow tremor of the earth above. She didn't speak. She calculated. Boone limped in, wrapped in a blood-soaked sling, his right arm nearly useless, bandages darkened with old grit. He'd refused surgery. The pain helped him think. They're not fighting us anymore, he said. They're burning the problem. Reese's voice came low. Then we stop being the problem. We become the consequence. Below them, NORAD's command floor was in motion. Engineers fed tactical data into quantum processors running on borrowed alien tech. Operators relayed coordinates to resistance cells worldwide. Soldiers in patched gear stood beside prototype railguns. The fight had changed shape. So had the response. Vasquez walked in, face half-scorched, dragging a new mount for Gertrude. The weapon had been reassembled 3 times in as many battles, its core now fused with a hybrid pulse engine. The woman herself looked carved from stubbornness. Her voice was low and unshaken. They've started deploying drop titans in Manhattan. Not infantry, walking reactors. They're flattening burrows. Boone glanced at Reese. Then we decapitate the titans. Reese nodded. How? Low orbit counterpunch. We send something up. Hit them where they feel untouchable. Reese motioned for the engineers. What came next wasn't debate. It was construction. In the salt flats of Utah, the remnants of an abandoned propulsion testing site began to hum. Civilian engineers turned resistance scroungers, welded parts from crashed Zarnathi skiffs to a pre-fusion atmospheric booster rig. Human hands adjusted alien couplings. American grit embraced galactic theory. The platform, dubbed Hammerlift, wasn't a spacecraft. It was a spear. At its tip was a modified armored pod, armed with nothing more than a kinetic driver cannon and a 5-man kill team. Boone, Vasquez, Richards, Reyes, and a former NASA technician turned weapons specialist named Grayson. The mission was simple in theory. Punch into orbit, breach the flagship coordinating the burn campaign, and break its brain. As they locked in, Grayson looked around the cabin. Just want to confirm we've all accepted this is a one-way trip. Boone bit down on a fresh stick of gum. It's only one way if we stop moving. When Hammerlift ignited, the ground shuddered for miles. Civilians ducked behind debris, shielding their eyes as a sonic wave tore through the air. For a moment, the sky split not because of violence, but because of defiance. 5 souls riding junkyard genius into the belly of godlike wrath. They breached low orbit with 20 seconds of stability. Then alarm screamed. The flagship's defense grid activated, launching shrapnel clouds and energy spears. Boone took over manual controls, wrenching the pod through impossible angles. Sparks flew. Panels burst. But the ship held. They slammed into the flagship's outer hull with enough force to rupture secondary shielding. Inside, gravity failed. Lights flickered. Zarnathi officers screamed orders as human boots stomped down their halls. The fighting was claustrophobic and fast. Alien weapons failed in close quarters. Human hands wielded knives, shotguns, and fire. Vasquez laid down suppressive bursts with Gertrude's pulse driver, ripping armor from commandos. Reyes hacked through security doors with a plasma cutter and a fire axe. Grayson rerouted coolant pipes to vent cryogenic fog into ambush zones. Every corridor was claimed inch by inch, blood-staining alien tiles. Boone led the charge toward the control nexus. When they reached it, what they found wasn't just a command center. It was a neural hub. A massive biotechnological entity pulsed in the center of the chamber, roots extending through the walls, synapses alive with signals. It wasn't a machine. It was a brain. Cortel had been replaced. Boone stared at the monstrosity. They built a hive mind. Central control. No leadership. No ego. Just calculation. Grayson approached the interface, tracing cables. It's parsing planetary resistance in real time. Every move we've made, it stored, modeled, predicted. Reyes checked the door. Then we shut it down. Now, they rigged explosives along its neural branches. But as Boone prepared the detonator, the entity spoke, not in words, but in pulse. Screens lit up with facial scans, old footage, tactical failures. Then it showed simulations. Earth burned. Resistance buried. Human extinction, clean and absolute. Boone stared. It thinks we've already lost. Vasquez didn't flinch. Then make it taste what it missed. They triggered the charges and ran. The core erupted in a blaze of fire and shrieking metal. The ship convulsed. Systems collapsed. Across the fleet, signal paths went dark. Coordination severed. The hive mind failed. Ships veered. Targeting arrays blinked out. Precision gave way to chaos. Boone's team barreled through escape corridors, fire nipping at their backs. They reached an auxiliary pod and launched before the explosion swallowed the command module. For a moment, the stars were fire. They fell. Hammerlift's emergency capsule hurtled through Earth's atmosphere. Engines long dead, hull screaming. They hit desert outside Santa Fe like a god's punch. Dust swallowed the wreck. When Boone pulled himself from the crater, vision doubled, lungs howling. He saw the sun. Then shadows. Civilians stood around the wreckage, rifles at the ready. Homemade armor reflecting morning light. Behind them came familiar faces. McBride. Reese. Survivors. Soldiers. Farmers. Hackers. They hadn't stopped. They'd risen in the chaos, swarming the crippled Zarnathi, turning retreat into slaughter. Reese approached, helping Boone to his feet. You killed their mind. Boone coughed. Then let's take their body. What followed was not war. It was a hunt. With the fleet blind and fragmented, human resistance surged. They captured drop titans, turned them on their creators. Railguns mounted on pickup trucks laid waste to outposts. Cities that had cowered days earlier became fortresses. School teachers coordinated artillery strikes. Children scouted alien patrols. Grannies built bombs. The world fought not as nations, but as a species. By the end of the second month, the Zarnathi begged for extraction. The Assembly, watching entire legions disappear into jumble traps and Appalachian cave networks, initiated total withdrawal. Their final transmission was simple. Humanity is ungovernable. Do not engage, ***. The skies cleared. Boone stood outside the rebuilt NORAD station, watching the stars. Vasquez sat beside him, tuning a new version of Gertrude, now engraved with the names of every fallen friend. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Across Earth, victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like breath. Like survival. Like the beginning of something heavier. Grayson joined them, holding a flask. We just kicked a guy out of orbit with duct tape and a bad attitude. Boone lit a cigarette. So what happens now? Reese stepped from the doorway behind them. Her voice was tired but firm. Now we prepare. Because someone else is always watching. And next time, it won't be the Zarnathi. Boone didn't argue. He just looked up and smiled. Because whatever came next, humanity had learned the only lesson that mattered. They were not alone, but they were ready.